The columns in a table are amenable to displaying the text they contain in different ways. You can change the heading that appears, wrap the heading text to fit the column width, align the text, and more. So in this view, we're going to look at the Start column and see what we can do with column settings. To get to those settings, right-click the column heading, and then choose Field Settings on the shortcut menu. So the first thing that you see in the Field Settings dialog box is that the field name is in the first box. So you can actually change the field in a column just by clicking the down arrow and choosing the field that you want. But in this case, we're going to leave it as Start. The other thing you can do is that initially, the column heading is the name of the field, but you can make that anything you want by putting a title in. So in this case, I'm going to call it Current Start. And if I click OK, you'll see that the new name appears in the heading. I'm going to open up the Field Settings dialog box again. Another thing you can do is you can align the title in the title box. So right now it's set to left, but you can choose center or right if you want. We'll set it to center. The other thing you can do is you can align the values in the cells. That's the Align Data box, and that's set to left here. But for example, let's say you have a yes/no field. You might want to align that to center so that the yes and no are away from the other values in the table. Now then there's the width box, and you can set a number in here to define the width of the column, but that's not really the best way to do it. If you want to make sure that the values in the column all appear, just click the Best Fit button. And then the column will either get wider or narrower to show all of the values in that column. Of course, there's another way that you can change the width of the column to show values, and that's to point to the divider in between two column headings. And you can drag to the right to make the column wider, or drag to the left to make it narrower. Going back to the Field Settings dialog box one more time, you can see the header text wrapping. And what that does is that will wrap the header text depending on the width of the column. So that's turned on. So when I go back to the column and I make it narrower, the heading is going to change to wrap. So let's say I make this column a little narrower, and now you can see that the heading is on 2 lines. Now, the one other thing you can do is you can actually wrap the values in cells in the table, and that's kind of like what you see right now with the task names. So you can see that task names are wrapped onto multiple rows if they're long, and they stay on one row if they're short. Well, you can do that in any column you want. So let's say I insert a column, and I'm going to choose Constraint Type, and then I right-click the column heading and choose Wrap Text. And when I do that, you can see that it wraps so that the entire value is visible given the width of the column. Well, if I make the column wider, then it'll change the wrapping, so it'll just take up the number of rows that it needs. In this case, it goes to 2 rows. If I make it narrower again, it'll go back to 3 rows. So you can still always see the entire value. One way to tell that that's turned on, if you right-click, you'll see that the wrap text icon has a green border around it. So that's how you change how column headings and column data look and act.